Hey guys, my name is Simeo, and today I finally had a chance to play the new Call of Duty Black Ops 4 beta, and I will admit, I was enjoying my time with it. The first thing that I was not expecting is that it seems like Treyarch is trying to create a more tactical and team-oriented Call of Duty. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, Matt. Either you can have COD or you can have tactical. You can't have both. And I can understand where you're coming from, and I will admit that this does play very similar to a lot of CODs. If you're expecting a grand deviation in a brand new direction for the franchise, you're probably gonna be sorely disappointed. But one thing that I do like is that it seems like they're moving in the direction of more of something like Rainbow Six Siege or Overwatch, where you have different heroes, or in this case specialists, that have abilities that if you work in tandem with your teammates are going to allow you to win the round and be a lot more successful. To give an example of this, if you're trying to defend a capture point on domination, you can either run around and take people out as they try to take the capture point, or you can play as Torque. Torque is a specialist with two different abilities. The first one is barbed wire. Any enemies that try to pass on through said barbed wire are not only going to be slowed significantly, but also take a ridiculous amount of damage in the process. And so anyone that's pushing from that direction is going to have a pretty big obstacle that they're going to have to overcome, and it essentially watches your flanks. On top of that, his second ability is essentially a gigantic deployable heat shield. Anyone that passes directly in front of it is also going to take damage. And so essentially, he is your anchor or your tank. If you want to be very defensive, that's your playstyle, that is the role that you think is going to allow your team to succeed and win the round, then you're probably going to want to play as this character. If you want to take it to the next level though, and add in a little bit of teamwork, you can have someone else on your squad play as Recon. Recon is able to shoot out essentially a motion sensor where if any enemy passes within its range, they're going to show up on the minimap. If you then have someone on your squad play as Seraph, who basically has a spawn beacon from the Battlefield franchise, if anyone gets taken out, they can select that spawn point, which is way closer than having to run all the way back from your base spawn. You're going to be able to reinforce that capture point if anyone does get taken out and is able to get through Torque's defenses. And so you can kind of see where Treyarch is trying to go with this next Call of Duty. It still plays like COD, it's very fast paced, but they're adding in these different mechanics and abilities to spice it up and really try to focus more on that team-oriented gameplay. Now, one thing I'm a little worried about though is that they're not going to have any game modes that really utilize or take advantage of these new abilities. If you play TDM, for example, sure, it's nice to have these cool specialist abilities and popping them every once in a while, but there really isn't anything that you're trying to defend. Like, why in the world would you ever want to play as Torque? Yeah, I guess you could hunker down on the side of the map, but that's not really what TDM is all about. It's just kind of sporadic chaos everywhere. And so a lot of these specialist abilities don't make a lot of sense in those certain game modes. And so I think it would be amazing if they added in something like they did with COD World War II, where they had their war game mode. You've got an offense and a defense. You're trying to push on forward, kind of like Rush from the Battlefield franchise, where you need to capture these objectives. That way you actually have to think about it a little bit more and communicate with your teammates if you want to be successful. What is our strategy? What kind of characters are we going to bring? What is our synergies going to be? And how are we going to counter what the enemy brings to the table? If all it is essentially TDM at the end of the day, where people are running around, yeah, it's nice to have these specialist abilities, but if they don't have a game mode that fully utilizes the systems that they're implementing, that will be a pretty big disappointment. Another thing that I found to be really fun is that you now have the ability to manually start the healing process. If you guys have played past Call of Duties, you know that if you take some damage, you have to be out of combat for a couple of seconds before your character will start to regenerate all the way back up to full HP. Well, now you simply click a button and your HP starts to regenerate. Now, this doesn't revolutionize Call of Duty, it doesn't completely change the way that you play the game, but it does give you other things to think about and gives you a lot more control over the situation. If you take a couple of rounds and you duck behind cover, you can now just start to regenerate. You didn't fire any shots off, you just need to get some health back, you can do so. If you're low on health, but also low on rounds because you just took out two enemies, but you know more about to round the corner on you, well, you now have to choose. Do I heal or do I reload? Most people probably need to reload because even if you have more HP, if you have nothing to actually deal with a threat in front of you, you're not going to survive. And so you have to think about that now. And while it does take a little bit of time time for you to get comfortable with this new system. There were moments early on when I just stood around waiting for my health to regenerate, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I have to click a button. Once you get comfortable with it, honestly, I think this is a really cool new addition to the Call of Duty because I just like the control that it gives to the player. Now, I don't want to talk too much about customization and weapon balance because I've only put 10 hours into the beta, and that really isn't enough time to get a good picture of the overall balance of the weapons in general. But one thing I did notice is that I'm not a fan of the body armor perk whatsoever. To my understanding, the body armor essentially allows you to absorb a couple extra shots. This means when you get into an engagement with someone and they don't have body armor, you have a pretty big advantage against them. The downside is that it will break, and as soon as it breaks, the only time you'll get it back is the next time that you respawn. And so my concern with something like this is that it's going to turn into a requirement if you want to win in those 1v1 situations. This is the same reason why I didn't like Juggernaut in past Call of Duties. Yeah, it's great that there was other options for that slot, but the name of the game is to survive, to win these 1v1s, and so of course everyone gravitates towards that option, and I'm afraid that might occur with this body armor. I might be jumping to conclusions a little bit with this, but that was definitely something I distinctly noticed while playing the beta. One thing I was really enjoying, though, is the new predictable recoil patterns on every single one of the weapons. I love when games add these kind of features because it makes you work for it a little bit more. If you play with a certain weapon, if you have a playstyle that you really enjoy, you can master these weapons and perfect it so that you can excel. I love having these higher skill ceilings introduced into games like Call of Duty. Battlefield is going to introduce it. Counter-Strike, for example. I really like when they add in that further level of depth, and I'm excited that Call of Duty is finally going in that direction. Now, if you're worried that it's going to be something like Counter-Strike, don't. It's nowhere near as crazy. Not only because you can aim down sight and it gives you that visual representation when you're recoiling, but also because you're not doing figure eights all over the place like you have to do in Counter-Strike, so that is nice as well. Now, one thing I'm not entirely sold on yet, though, is the new fog of war dynamic. Essentially, everyone on your team, including yourself, has a view distance around them that shows up on the minimap. If any enemy gets within your range, your detection range, they will show up as a red dot on said minimap. And so you can be running around and just staring at your minimap the entire time and notice someone directly behind you because of this new fog of war system. There were a lot of moments when I was chasing after someone, I thought I had the drop on them. I was basically just waiting so I could get a clear shot, and then seemingly out of nowhere, they whipped around and took me out. For the longest time, I just figured it was because they had a UAV up in the air or because I made a noise. I never fired my weapon, but then I started to notice people behind me on my minimap. They never took a shot. They didn't do anything to really identify that they were directly behind me. The only thing is that as soon as they got within that cone vision on the minimap, that's when their dot showed on up. And so the reason why I'm not entirely sold on this is that while I'm all for giving players information on the minimap, I feel like this is taking things too far. I think this is going to incentivize people to stare at that the entire time, and I think that distracts from the overall experience. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe there's going to be ways of countering this. Maybe I just don't fully understand the system right now, but from my experience so far, it did leave a sour taste in my mouth. The final thing that I think is worth mentioning is that I was experiencing a fair amount of lag and pretty abysmal netcode in some situations. Now, I realize the Call of Duty franchise isn't always known for having the best netcode. I mean, of course, they're notorious for having peer-to-peer connections, but there were some moments where I really didn't understand why I was losing some of these engagements and why the enemy was winning. There were some times why I didn't even understand why I actually won the fight and the enemy lost. There seems to be a fair amount of lag. Now, I realize that this is a beta. Hopefully this isn't an indication of the final product. They're going to be tweaking it, probably stress testing. That's probably one of the reasons why they're doing this beta, but it was a little worrisome. All in all, though, I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with the beta. It is still way too early to tell if this is going to be good at release. We only have a select few weapons. We only have a couple of maps. We haven't even played the Battle Royale mode. I think that beta comes out in September, but I really like what they're doing with these new systems. At the end of the day, it is still Call of Duty. If you're expecting anything revolutionary, if you're expecting a brand new direction for this franchise, you're going to be disappointed. But I like the fact that they are trying to incentivize and adding in new mechanics to incentivize teamwork. I've always wanted more of that in the Call of Duty Duty franchise, and so I'm really hopeful they're going to utilize that as much as possible when the game releases. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your guys' thoughts on Call of Duty Black Ops 4 if you've had a chance to play the beta. Are you disappointed? Do you like what you see right now? Let me know down below. But yeah, until tomorrow, have a good one and take it easy.